and welcome back. Had a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend? Good? Survived the Havoc weekend of Black Friday? Good there? Well, we have to deal with Cyber Monday as of the time of this recording on Sunday, but that's probably already past us by this point. At least it's not as blood savvy as Black Friday, per se. But let's get on with this week's episode of Ray Donovan called Ellis Island. I feel like there's going to be a lot of episodes that are just going to be related to names of various locations in New York. Because the first two episodes we had Staten Island and all this crazy, selective names they picked for the episodes, but I like to see they would hold back from naming their episodes off of areas in New York. No guarantees. I keep hearing rumors there's only going to be 10 episodes for this one, but who knows? Those are only rumors. If it ever does come to the season finale, I will know. But let's get on with it. Ellis Island. So, we pick up immediately where Pudge had left off, with Chalky getting with Chalky and his gang getting their asses beaten, which leaves Chalky to get arrested by the police. And while Ray drives him home, or at least he drives Smitty home, it gives him a chance to try and sort of discuss a few things, try to lighten things down, keep relaxed, all this stuff that makes Ray Donovan, Ray. Because whenever somebody's in a dire, desperate situation, he has to try and make sure that whoever he's helping tries and keeps their composure, tries to keep cool. One of the things that Smitty talks about to relax a bit is he talks about Ellis Island, otherwise known as the location of the Statue of Liberty. Now, to be honest with you, I have never visited New York. I really want to. I mean, if you look at, my videos in the past where I talk about films that take place in New York, like Nerve, for instance, I always say in those that I really want to visit New York, because it's a big city. It's a big guarantee. It looks beautiful. It's grand. It's huge. And it was at one point named New Amsterdam. Why they changed it, I can't say, but people just liked it better that way. A reference to They Might Be Giants with Istanbul. Anywho, he talks about Ellis Island, which kind of gives Ray a little bit of an idea for when Connor's over to visit New York for a bit. But Ray keeps it on the back of his mind as he drops Smitty off back at the apartment. But this leaves at one disadvantage. Because while Smitty returns to his apartment, Bridge actually was out there waiting for Smitty to return, which doesn't give him a chance to try and change out of his clothes. And whenever Bridge sees Ray with somebody, she knows the big deal. She knows what's going down. So, yeah, she can see through the lies. But later on in the episode, as he drops Smitty off and drives somewhere, he winds up getting a call from Terry, whom gets a call from Bunchy in the previous episode, where he talks to Ray about his return and his call, per se. which of course makes Terry sort of kind of question himself. Why is Bunchy suddenly calling him after so many years of quiet and silence? Why now, of all things? So, of course, the both of them visit Terry's apartment. So, of course, Ray visits his apartment, and then they just talk a bit. They see each other, look at their condition. Like, of course, since Terry's been in that underground fight club in last week's episode, Ray still worries about the condition that Terry is in. Because if you remember last season, Terry has had something added into him to help control the Parkinson's that he has. Which in the last season, if I remember right, there was some sort of thing that kept him normal, but if the thing was turned off, he'd suddenly go to being Shaky Terry. But I don't remember the previous episodes. I gotta pick them up sometime. Anywho, both of them discuss it between one another. Ray worries about him fighting again, especially with his Parkinson's condition and all that. And Terry just is wanting to know why the hell Bunchy called him. And to at least have Ray keep Terry up to speed on the ever-growing situation we have with that. So, we have that ordeal to go with. And while Bunchy and Mick are out of luck, seeing as how Sandy left with their money, they now have to find themselves a get-rich-quick scheme. So, for a while, they rent out a hotel room to stay in for a while. Which, while registering, he winds up seeing a little bit of something that catches his attention. Something that gives him a quick idea, which they'll mention later in the episode. But it's hinted at it's some sort of like transport tour of the high hills in New York or whatever, like rich people, all that. Which, it could be a robbery, who knows? Or some sort of smuggling ordeal. Again, we won't know. But while in court, and while this doesn't play much of a plot, it still may play some elements into the show later on, for all we know. But what we can gather from this is that the criminal that Officer Mack was handling, that Randall from last week basically picked him up, brought him to court, and to look at some of the criminals, including one of them that Officer Mack was looking after. And that criminal is at the sentencing point where he's going to a place called Arthur King Prison. I can't speak today. But, yeah, he's going to be sentenced and he's going to be brought to prison, leaving Officer Mack and Randall to figure out some sort of big ordeal to deal with, which I'm guaranteeing you may be seen later in the season. There's a lot to go through, and I feel like I'm going to be here forever, but let's try and pick things up. Anyways, Ray picks up Connor from the airport with of course, Ray having a plan in the back of his mind, especially after his talk with Smitty, to bring Connor to Ellis Island to visit the Statue of Liberty and see all of the relatives that have departed from the olden country and traveled all the way to New York to make America anew. But, of course, Connor is just making up, some excuses on how he doesn't want to hang out with Ray, especially after everything that's happened, And especially in the last season, how he, with Connor, as he wants to actually make a man of himself, try to make the Donovan name proud, how he's serving the country and all that. So, we'll have to figure out the ordeal from there. But let's continue onwards from where we're at. Samantha meets up with the mayor of the town, Mayor Ed, as Samantha wants to try to buy the prison that one of the criminals is in, but also to endorse publicity, endorsements, and advertising for Novak, because remember, she's running for mayor, and that's going to be probably one of the big things this season's going to focus on, which that ought to be fun. So, he does not budge, which leads Samantha to have to figure out another way around this. However, we'll focus on a bit of that later, which of course leads to a point that Ray visits Samantha, tells him that he's got a plan, but he won't tell her what it is, and they just go on their ways, which is typical for a Donovan ordeal. So there's obviously all of that. But also, just for a brief given moment, he winds up traveling on that bus that was giving the tour, which gives him a big plan. Jotting down information, the layout of the bus, where to set up something, and just to figure out a way, again, that get-rich-quick scheme, which is what Mickey is trying to pull off so that they can get out of the country without being noticed. But the question is, how will Bunchy handle this, especially since he's taking care of Maria? But, again, we won't know until we find out later on in the episode. But anyways, Ray winds up taking Connor to visit the set of Mr. Lucky, but only to find out that Daryl is gone and the director is completely and utterly ticked off, and starts going on this rant on how people aren't going to the movies anymore, they're seeing it on their phones and everything, how the art of going to the movies is dying out, and whatnot. And this is a big thing that's been happening, and even it's hinted by a couple of directors that they really wish that people would at least go to the movies every so often, just to see a big grand film and not wait for it to come out digitally, or that'll drive a director insane. So, yeah, he's ticked off. He basically sees that Daryl is gone, and Ray calls him up to try and bring him back to the set, which gives the idea, which I will cover later on. Again, mentioning that hinting point, So, what we see next is that Mick winds up giving information on how they can get some cash from the ride on the bus. So that can be hinted at for next week's episode. And maybe even the episodes playing further on. We won't know till next week, so there's that. But with the matter of that, this sort of kind of leaves Bunchy at a standstill. Like, how is this going to affect his life? How is this going to affect Maria? And in all these conditions that he's gone through, I mean, he's suffered a lot. Like, so far he's suffered a lot. Like, he's on the verge of, like, having to lose the one thing that he cares of in his life, and he has to make a decision whether or not he wants to have Maria with him in his crime scheme, or leave him in the hands of the right people. Something to think about. So, leaving the whole ordeal that was hinted at somewhere as Ray talked to Samantha about the ordeal he has, but he won't tell her, Novak is sent out to jog as she is attacked out in public by a mysterious hooded stranger, creating some sort of campaign stunt or whatever to sort of give her more numbers and rankings and, you know, what have you. So, yeah, that hopefully gets Daryl, of course, back on his feet, but also kind of helps out a bit, especially seeing as how Samantha wants Novak to be the new mayor for New York, so that's got to be taken into account. But let's get to the portion that everybody's been looking forward to, especially seeing as how the aforementioned island and the whole title is brought up throughout the episode, especially when Connor's there. Basically, Ray winds up arriving to get onto the ferry to visit the Statue of Liberty. Unfortunately, Connor decided to basically just say, "Screw you, Dad! I'm actually gonna hang out with I'm gonna hang out with Bridge and Smitty and just drink my booze away and beer and just be completely a gentleman about it before I head off to war." Like, he acts like that. He doesn't want to hang out with Ray. And seeing as how he sort of kind of doesn't like Ray at the moment, leading into another big ordeal that I'll bring up in a moment. At least at the end of the episode, per se. So, yeah, Ray is left on his own to visit the island, as he winds up seeing a mysterious stranger that decides to hang out with him. Sort of a descent of the, what I could say is Irish, is someone of Scotland descent who's visiting the island. Which, of course, leaves Ray a bit relaxed and winds up picking up a chat with her, talking about the family, his job, giving him some sort of comfort, knowing that no matter what, family is always there with him. Even if it seems like he doesn't want to let Connor pick the wrong choice in his life, he sort of is reminded to just sort of let go. And of course they look through a panel which has just about every name possible that traveled to New York, as he winds up coming across one of his relatives that actually was on the island. But just as he takes the picture and sort of like tells the mysterious stranger thank you, suddenly she's gone. Like, nowhere to be seen whatsoever. That is completely insane. And where does it leave Ray? It leaves Ray baffled, sure, but it kind of gives him a little bit of comfort. But it's interesting to see that he saw some sort of ghost or something that told him it's alright to do this. It's alright to be calm about that. No fret, no worry, no... just don't sweat it. Which leaves off to where Bunchy drops off Maria at Terry's apartment, which leaves Terry questioning what Bunchy's going through right now. But again, Bunchy doesn't want to have Maria involved in what Mickey and Bunchy are going to do in the later season. In at least the later episodes, I mean. But then, as the night comes, Connor basically talks with Smitty for a while before Ray picks him up to go to the airport to drop him off to, have him be on his way to Europe for whatever combat that he's going to fight for. Again, the idea that, they're writing him out of the show entirely until, there may be some point that a slight chance that he'll either return back or they'll be given the flag of passing away. I don't know the right term for it, but it's that term, yeah. Anywho, basically Ray worries for his sake and worried about the fact that he may or may not lose him, which kind of gives Ray the big expression that if he doesn't have a proper goodbye, or at least he tries to convince him to think his decision, but his mind is set on serving in the army to serve his country, and even Ray offers to see him go. But Connor refuses as he grabs his stuff and leaves. A thing that pops into the mind when anyone ever considers what they say to people, what they think, the one thing they have to say before they leave is at least them knowing that the other relative cares for them. Ray is trying to give sort of this proper goodbye to Connor, but Connor, basically being 18 and in the army, refuses to let him be seen at the airport by his other troopers. That I can see. I mean, 18-year-olds would be embarrassed to be with their mothers and fathers if they were out in public and whatnot, but, Ray is trying to do the best he can for his family. He's trying to give a proper goodbye to Connor. And what he pulled off was not a proper goodbye. but more of an abrupt hello, goodbye, and hope to see you later, or in German, auf Wiedersehen. Just all that. No, I bye, love you, any of that. You leave off of not saying a proper goodbye to them, and they die. They will feel like they're responsible for their death. That grieving despair. You have to take into account every minute in life counts. What you have, what you do or say for a person leaves a big impact on whomever you're talking to. Life moves too quickly, as Ferris Bueller puts it. If you don't stop around to look once in a while, you could miss it. That quote is, at this point, relatable in every fashion of that. This is that ordeal that Ray's going through. Sorry, got a little bit carried and off track. I just hope I didn't waste your time with that, which I might have already. Apologies for that. But life's very delicate. So, let's wrap it up. This is the final portion of the episode. Mickey and Bunchy plan their little plan to try and get rich quickly and as soon as possible before they're caught. Mac and Ray wind up talking about their kids and how times change with them, how time flies, how they can think differently than what the parents thought of them. Then this basically leaves Officer Mac to basically have Ray come over to see Mac and his buddies essentially fire off weapons. Because why not? There has to be some sort of connection with Ray and Officer Mac somehow. Within it, Terry winds up taking care of Maria in his apartment, now having to be not only a boxer and a trainer, but also a babysitter for the little Donovan. Then, of course, Novak is spread all over the news. Daryl is back on the set. Connor leaves for his flight. And Ray watches the plane take off from the distance with him next to Officer Mac and his friends. And then in the end, Ray sits at his apartment, staring at the Statue of Liberty. Then Novak comes knocking at his apartment. She offers some booze, or at least offers to have a drink with Ray. And then, to end it all off, Ray does the whole in-out, in-out. Or, as Cuban people call it, chick-chick-a-bone, chick-chick-a-bone. But that's where it all ends. Yeah, apologies if I went so meta on that episode, but it's just, there's just some big, deep meaning, especially when Ray's trying to make amends with Connor, and Connor's just not basically just making his own plans. And yeah, it's just, Ellis Island made me think. It actually made me think on how delicate life is, how important it is to live every minute to the fullest that you can possible, how it's important to be with your relatives as long as possible before you go head first into some ordeal that you may regret and you'll suffer from in the afterlife. Ellis Island was, it's probably just me, but it just left a huge impact on me. I just don't know how to react. This has probably got to be the best episode of Ray Donovan at this point. This, in my opinion, this has to be the best. Sure, we had some struggling issues with last season, but this is probably the best of the best Ray Donovan episodes. What else can you say but Ellis Island gives me my seal of approval. And we're left off to find next week's episode. Yeah, so what'd you think of Ellis Island? Just leave a comment down there, and apologies for that little tangent thing I went on, but I don't know, it just made me think. Just put the end slate here. It's just, I'm gonna need myself a good long while to think.